stage, I will not give you any presentation. Because good or bad, however I may look, it would be better if we look at one another rather than you're looking this side and I am talking this side. Another thing, this is a conclave of the specialists. The specialist IT engineers, IT industry, the media, again focused on a particular branch of IT rollouts, IT conceptualization, e-governance, digitization. I introduce myself as a non-IT man, having come here to benefit from the knowledge that is exchanged here in the next, today and tomorrow, and also put across before you the observations and point of view of one stakeholder which is not represented here, the citizen. Starting from what we have achieved, just a brief mention as a way of acknowledgement from a citizen. As Mr. Pandey was saying, UID has been a revolution. No doubt about it. The second thing that has happened in our country that can also be called as a silent revolution is the transparency brought in by the Right to Information Act. The third thing, which can also be called a revolutionary step of the recent years that has been carried out in various states by now, that's the Right to Service Act, where the citizen has been empowered with the right to get certain services of a prescribed quality and within a given time frame by the government. Yes, government to citizens is not the only important segment. Government to citizens services can be delivered in an efficient manner only if the government to government and other back-end services are there. There's digitization. All 9 pillars of digitization are very well understood. It is a continuous process. We are gaining a lot in terms of technology innovations, but at the same time, we must not forget that the citizens' expectations are also growing, perhaps at a much faster pace than the pace that is followed by the IT sector. Therefore, there's always a gap between what they expect and what the governments can deliver. And for the governments who want to deliver, there's nothing more important than an effective, intelligent, futuristic use of IT as a tool. So far as Punjab is concerned, in a nutshell only, we can share with you the intent. The Deputy Chief Minister is the Minister in charge for IT and e-governance now. And in a very unusual move, the Chief Secretary has been made the Principal Secretary of IT also, because IT, as you just mentioned, runs outside the IT and e-governance department. It runs in health, it runs in excise taxation, it runs in food procurement, it runs in social security, it runs in welfare, it runs in education. And though the Chief Secretary in Punjab is assisted by a couple of secretaries of IT under him and a directorate and everything. But for giving a big push to the IT all across the departments, perhaps it works better if the Chief Secretary is also the Principal Secretary of IT that is there in Punjab, and one of the most powerful ministers is the Deputy Chief Minister. He has taken the portfolio of e-governance and IT with him. So we are here to share knowledge. A couple of things that I want to share. Number one, Punjab can legitimately claim to have gone ahead in food grain procurement management systems. We procure about 20,000 crores worth of wheat and another 20,000 crores of paddy in a time span of 45 days twice a year. The farmers bring their produce to the mandis. It has to be quantified, it has to be put to the test of quality. The farmers must get their payments according to the two tests that I just mentioned within 48 hours. Some portion of it has to go directly to the Aadhati, as we call, I don't know what is that in English, commission agents. Some part of it goes to the transporters, some part of it goes to the handlers and laborers. Now, this entire process involving all the agriculturists in Punjab, because all agriculturists in Punjab grow wheat and paddy, essentially. It has benefited them to an extent you can't imagine. There are no delays. They have their cards, they swipe it in the machines. Within 24 hours, all the bills raised during the day go to a clearing house, and next day, everyone's account is credited with the amount that is due to him. On an average, during these 40 days, we disburse 2,000 to 3,000 crores every day. So this is one which anyone, if he has to deal with the food procurement issues, can come and study in Punjab and replicate it. Second is, I think that is being done in all the states now, management of treasuries and this and that. The excise and taxation department, there are thousands and thousands of refund claims. And then the MIS, because the state's finances depend solely on the receipts from this department. So we have to go all out to plug the leakages and such things. So there's a complete IT rollout and elimination of manual information systems in this. That is also one of the major things. So I was not embarrassed much when Mr. Pandey was reading out the enrollment percentages. Punjab has already completed 94% of the UID enrollments, and we have enrolled 2 crore 77 lakh people. So that makes about 93% of our population. And this year's target up to 31st of December is that we will take the enrollment level to 96%. So that gives us a very fair advantage to avail of all the linked facilities to Aadhaar. The revolutionary programs recently announced by the Honorable Prime Minister are also aimed at financial inclusion, like we have the Jan Dhan and another revolutionary program of giving insurance to the people, etc. We are better geared up to adopt them fully. Another initiative that we are going to start for improving our citizen-centered services that is worth sharing we enacted the Right to Service Act in the year 2010. That was also the year when we abolished in Punjab all non-statutory affidavits, because a feeling came and it was realized that why should we not trust our citizens? Why should we ask everyone to make a statement on oath, even when it was not a statutory requirement, like it is for fighting cases in the courts and all, that is a statutory requirement. But for otherwise, if you have to declare your income, even if you have to go to an ex-India leave, why should you need to give an affidavit that I will come back, and if I don't come back, such and such person will be responsible for any loan, etc. that I've taken. There are hundreds of affidavits. There were hundreds of affidavits which were required to be given at the times of admissions, at the time of doing all things which are essential to life. In 2010, we deleted 53 such non-statutory affidavits with our intention to decomplicate the lives of the people, because getting an affidavit made and stamped and submitted, so I was talking of the Right to Service Act. We have at the moment 206 services notified under the Act. And we have also prescribed the timelines within which those services have to be delivered by various departments to the citizens on demand. We have an MIS. At the moment it's working through an electronic flow in case of 52 services, and the rest within 3 months, because we have recently increased the number of services. So that is bringing a great revolution in governance. We have become citizen-centric, because the moment any application crosses the deadline prescribed by the Right to Service Act, we come to know about it. We track it. And then if the delay is not bona fide, we have a process of disincentives for the persons who sleep over the requests of the citizens. From the last June, when 20% of the applications crossed the deadlines, the figure in the last 3 months has come down to 0.3% all over Punjab. And the number of applications, of course, are more than 2 to 3 lakhs a month. Now, this has been done not by 100% rollout of IT solutions. We are in the process of doing that. We have decomplicated the lives of the citizens through manual effort, augmenting the IT rollout. Now we are all set to decomplicate our lives also by ensuring electronic flows, by digitizing the back end to 100% extent, by having such an MIS where there's total elimination of human beings. The basic principle, when a person who is supposed to do something has to give his own report whether he has done it or not, is totally unauthentic information. So therefore, the information that we must get at the government level about these things, about compliance, about accountability, should not emanate from the person who is on the dock. The accused or the person whose performance is being checked, he should not be the judge in his own case. That is the essence of MIS, and that can be possible only if we ensure electronic flows, back-end digitization, and an MIS generation with the elimination of the human being. Of course, at the last end, someone has to punch it, but the person concerned should not be doing it. There should be some third party. We are doing this. Then we are going into 100% this driving licenses, this and that everyone is doing. The race is to reach 100% mark. Someone is at 70%, someone is at 10%, someone is at 9%. So basically, we are in Punjab thinking from the citizen's point of view, and we have started trusting the citizen, not forcing him to prove whatever he says through self-certification, and to provide him the 206 services which are vital to his day-to-day existence in a time-bound manner. So I think that is how we are empowering the citizen, for which digitization, etc., is very, very important. Another thing which I wanted to mention is that in this program we have mentioned about the smart cities. I'm not saying that we have not thought of the villages. Of course, the connectivity and other issues we are taking to the villages. But in our IT rollout and digitization, I think the gap between the rural India and the urban India needs to be realized. And our increased focus should be to convert smart villages. Otherwise, our cities will never remain smart unless we enable the village population to live with the same facilities, to enjoy the same dignified human existence as is available in the cities. How will the cities remain smart when the villages will keep on converging to the cities? To what extent the infrastructure, whether it's civil infrastructure or IT infrastructure or whatever infrastructure, how will the infrastructure of existing infrastructure of the cities will sustain an exodus or migration from the villages? There are many countries in the world which have this system of having smart villages, from where people go to their places of work, either within their village or to the cities or to the industrial zones, and come back and stay in the villages. For that they need the same internet facilities, the same other facilities, health facilities, etc., which are IT will make available all sorts of those facilities in the villages. So smart cities and smart villages must go together. Another very interesting thing for a border state, for a state which is sensitive from law and order point of view, is the surveillance. And I am happy that there's a session on surveillance, use of IT in surveillance in this conference. I would like to enrich myself from the knowledge that is shared in that session, because see, the state is a border state, it's a sensitive state, it's a volatile state, and we have to be very careful. We are very careful, and we want to be still more careful, because what happens is it's not localized crimes. We have to even deal with the portents of underground warfare by hostile neighbors. So we have to be, we'll be the first one to take advantage of IT application in surveillance, and we'll go to the next level of that. We are already using it, so that will be very useful for us. One request from me for everyone to consider and respond to during the conference. Are we effective in providing quality services to the citizens? For example, if I have an internet connection, 3G, 4G, or whatever, is it giving me the right quality of services? Is it giving me uninterrupted services at the right speed? I'm just giving you an example. Do we have strong enough regulators? Now, we can digitize India, we can ensure connectivity, if that connectivity is not reliable, if the connectivity is not uninterrupted, if the quality of that connectivity goes up and down, that will amount to maintaining two systems. Electronic flow and reliance thereon is good only if it substitutes the conventional systems. If we end up maintaining two systems, two parallel systems, the conventional system also and the new innovation, that's not very useful because that involves a lot of resources and involves a lot of manpower, and then the transition is never final. So my suggestion is that think of something to ensure that every citizen, now we are talking of M-governance, we are talking of involvement of citizens at the at the level of last man on the street. So we have to ensure uninterrupted services, we have to ensure high quality services, and the service providers have to be under a very strict filter. So that's very important. So I need not repeat the 9 pillars of digital initiatives and what all we are commonly doing in all the states in the field of tehsil, revenue, blocks, health, social service, this. But I'll give you one example. We give old age pensions worth about 250 crores rupees a year. Just by deduplicating the list of the applicants on the basis of Aadhaar information and also the voters card, we have saved 23 crores last year. So this is how we need to use these services. And friends, we are a team, we are working for one country. We should not confine our knowledge to our own minds. We should not have knowledge silos, something good being done in Chhattisgarh, something good being done in Goa, something good being done in Delhi or Punjab should be replicated. I'm happy that Government of India has now a portal where the best practices are being uploaded. Let's make full use of that, and let's make full use of the initiatives like this, for which I want to congratulate the organizer, ILETS, and the hosts, Government of Goa. We should have more of these conferences of knowledge exchange. And thank you very much, ILETS, and thank you, Government of Goa.